When you start Game Maker, you'll see a screen like this. You'll need to type in your email if it's not there already and your password, and then log in. You can either download the new version or just ignore it. Want to get started on a new project, and it's going to be drag and dropped. And Game Maker language is if you know how to script. If you don't know, and the class we'll be covering is drag and drop. We're going to make a maze game. Call it Maze 1 and save it. That now brings us to our workspace where we can start to put our game together. Now the three essential bits we need for the game, at the start at least anyway, are sprites, which can then become objects. Sprites are the graphics element of your character. Object is the character that gets put on the game itself, and it can have certain properties. It can also respond to events, so such as tapping on the keyboard or colliding with another object. And finally we need a room, and that's the stage which your game is played on. And now normally we have a room 0 is there already. So we've got our room set up ready to drop our objects onto. So first of all we need to make our sprite. So we right click on sprites and go to create. Now we need to import an image. I have actually given you or shared with you a folder on my Google Drive with lots of graphics for Game Maker, and this is where I'm getting the graphics from for this game. So we go to import, we go to, well, you won't have it on Google Drive, but you'll have it shared, and you'll probably need to download the graphics from the file to your own hard disk and then use them this way. So we go to sprites, we go to various, and we're looking for a snowman, which is there. Yes, we do want to import it, and we want to call it SPR to show it's a sprite, and it's snowman. And there, over on the right here, you can see that SPR snowman now appears. The second thing sprite we want to make is the walls of our maze. So we need to create another sprite. We need to import another image. So we go back to Game On and we go to, I think it's this one, and sprites. We're going to sprites GC. And I'm coming down here and picking this certain wall brick. Yes, we do want to have it, and there it is there. Now it's pretty big, and we really don't want it that big. So I'm going to resize it, and we can do that by going over here to this little icon here and resize. And we want to scale in %, which is probably easiest. And we want to make it 50%. I want it to be half the size of it is. Now you'll notice that 50 changes both because we've got our maintain aspect ratio. In other words, what you do to the width also happens to the height. And we want to apply that now, and you'll see that our brick has become much smaller, which is a lot easier to work with. And finally, we're going to call this sprite underscore wall. And again, our sprite has now appeared. So that's all we need to do with the sprites. Now we need to make the objects that correspond to those sprites. So we're going to make an obj underscore snowman, and we're going to use the snowman sprite. And this is where having your name is really useful, because then you know what's going on. Don't worry about events at the moment. We're just setting up our sprites. We also want to make sure that it's solid, and we want to make sure it uses physics, and this means that it does things like bounce off walls and stuff like that. Okay, so there we have our snowman, and it's now appeared in our object, so we can just close all that. The second thing we need to do is make a wall, and we can create object, we're going to call it obj underscore wall, and we're going to obviously use the wall sprite. It's also going to be solid. Don't worry about using physics, it doesn't need to bounce off anything, it's just static. And that's all done, so we can close that. Alright, so what we need to do now is go to our room. So here's our room. It's normally have a grid so you have an idea of where everything is. If you notice down here on the left hand side, as I move the cursor, it tells you the X and Y values of where you are. X being the horizontal measurement and Y being the vertical measurement. We normally start up here as 0, 0 in the corner, and then it moves from here across X that way getting bigger, and down here in Y getting bigger. It's almost opposite to what you're used to in maths in your Cartesian coordinates. So first of all, we're going to put our wall. So we click on our wall sprite, and we can start by dragging our sprite across. Not our sprite, of course. Our object, here we go. And we can put the object where we want to go. And then we can continue to add that object. If you hold down the Alt button, you'll find that as you click, another one appears and you can paint it. It's a lot easier than trying to get one at a time. So I'm holding down the Alt button and clicking with my left button. Oops. And then we can do some walls out here. Again, I've got that one. Alt button down. If you put one in the wrong place, right. You put one in the right place, wrong place rather, just click it and press the delete button. You can also move these along. So again, Alt. I'm just holding down the Alt button and clicking, whoops, and I can just fill in my maze as I go. Alright, now I'm not going to do the whole maze here, but you can see what I'm getting at and you can build the maze up. The second thing I want is my snowman. So I drag the snowman. We did it wrong again. We need the object. The sprite won't work. Okay. One thing, advice, is you can certainly change the width of these passageways on your window, on your room rather. Make sure that your sprite is not too big, that it is really tight and getting around these, otherwise you'll find it's really hard. This one's obviously got plenty of room, so we're fine. Now, the next thing we have to do, excuse me, is start putting in information to show how we can move this object around. So the first thing we do is we just close our room. And go to our snowman. There we go. Just double click the snowman and it will appear. We need to put some events in to explain how to get it to move, and what we're going to do is add an event. Our event is going to be a key down event, and we start with left. Okay. How do we do that? Well, we go over to our menu here, and this tells us all the things we want. We want to come down here to the movement menu. So we drag this across, set, and if it's going left, then we need to click left. The other thing we need to do is set our speed, otherwise it's going to sit there and do nothing. I'm going to set the speed as 2. So we're going left at a speed of 2. Don't worry about the direction because you've already set it. And that's all we need for this one. Okay, close that. Next one, an event. Key down is right. And again, we do the same as what we just did a minute ago on the movement. And the recently used ones are handy there. We can drag these two across. We want right, and we want 2. The bigger speed you have there, the faster it goes. If you click relative, then it actually accelerates as you click the button, which can have your icon disappear very quickly off the screen. Okay, that's the right. We do the same for... So here we've done the other two, as I just said. We did left and right before, now we've done up and down, so that's all our movement. Now if we leave it like that, it means that the sprite or the object will just continue moving forever. So we need to make another one that stops when we put the key up, and that's key up, any key up, and we want that then to change the speed to 0 so that it just stops. Alright, so does it work? Let's have a look. Okay, we need to save that to make sure that we've got everything just in case things go wrong, and then we run it by clicking the little triangle here, and with a bit of luck it'll actually appear on the screen, which it does, and therefore we know that as we can move our snowman around by pressing the arrow keys, and it stops when we stop pressing them, except it goes through walls, which is a bit of a problem. So that's our next thing to solve. Okay, to solve this problem, what we need to do is to go to the snowman object and open this, and we want it to be a collision with a wall. So it's a collision with a wall. So what happens to there is we're just going to set a random direction. It means it goes off anywhere. And it means that we can then move it away from the wall, but it's not going to go through the wall because it's two solid objects. Okay, so if we just come back now, we run that. And it appears on our screen, and there we go. We can't go through the wall. See, it stops beforehand. We can go up. Doesn't let us, but it lets us run along the wall, but it doesn't let us go through. So that's how to get objects moving, and also how to stop them going through walls.